let's create a rough mix of our assets before we place them into our game. Now, this can be done by adjusting the voice volume on the General Settings tab for each one of the objects and containers. But to be honest with you, I find that to be a really clunky way of being able to balance your assets, since you're only able to listen to one of these at a time. Instead, we're going to create a mixer session, which will enable us to mix audio the way we would traditionally do it in any type of DAW. Now, before we create our mixer session, we're going to create a audio bus, which is going to be thought of as almost like a subgroup or a group channel, which can be used to control all of the environmental assets at one time. So I'm going to go to the master mixer hierarchy. I'm going to click on the master audio bus, which is just what you think it is a master fader. And I'm going to create a new child by control clicking on it or right clicking, and I'm going to choose audio bus. I'm going to now name this audio bus environmental assets. Okay. Now I can go to each one of the containers and objects, and if I look at the output bus in the general settings, I now have the ability to assign it to a different audio bus, and I'm going to assign everything to the environmental assets bus. I'm having you guys set everything up like this ahead of time to ease the transition when we're working on weeks 2 and 3 to make the mix even easier to operate and to be as efficient as possible. Okay, so now that everything is run through the environmental assets bus, which is in turn routed through to the master audio bus. We can get a big picture view of this if we look in our layouts menu at our schematic view. I'm going to just deselect that here. And I happen to really like this schematic view here since it does a great job of being able to give us a visual snapshot of what's occurring in the project. You can see that everything starts at the master audio bus and moves down to the additional subgroups or additional audio buses, and then followed by containers, their objects, and the audio assets that are associated with them. I'm going to close this now, and I'm going to move over to my mixer layout. Now, this mixer layout is very configurable, and it's very customizable. We're going to set this up so that we create a series of mixer sessions. Each mixer session that you see up here is going to be devoted to mixing a specific group of assets. Located at the bottom, we have a Soundcaster session that we can create as a method of testing these, and we're going to be doing both. So let's start by going over to our mixing desk. We're going to click on the double arrow and click on New. We're going to then create a new mixer session, and this is going to be called, you guessed it, Environmental Assets. So we now click on OK. And in this, you can see that by default, this creates our master audio bus. We're going to next bring in the individual objects and containers, which will be assigned to this environmental assets mixer group. So let's drag the AMB stingers and create a channel strip for it. You can see at the top that this is where we could mute or solo it. This shows the output bus for this specific container, and if we scroll on down, you would find every component that you would typically find on a normal channel strip in any kind of console, whether it's the filter settings like EQ wise, if it's a makeup gain, so more of an additional gain control, and then the component that we're going to be interested in, our voice volume. Now we can create additional channel strips by simply dragging the objects directly on over. And so this will now give us the ability to have a small mixer which is devoted to just this group of assets. But unfortunately, at the moment, we're not able to hear anything, and that's because we need to create a Soundcaster session. So we click on the bottom and choose New. And I'm going to, you guessed it, call this Environmental Assets. And then we'll click on OK. And just like you did in last month's course, we're going to select all of the audio events that we have, including the stop events, and we're going to drag them over into our Soundcaster session. Now be careful, this is one of the quirks about this, is that you can see that it occasionally will have some issues with redrawing the screen, which is somewhat annoying, but do understand that everything is still functional. So let's go ahead and create a basic mix. I'm going to start by looking at the play main ambient loop. And if I increase the volume, we can hear it there. And from that, let's now bring in our ambient stingers. I'm going to bring those down. And let's simulate now what happens if we were to walk into the large chamber. Oops, it's because I pressed the stop one. Mark, sometimes you're an idiot. And we can now press the stop to hear it fade out. And we can go through the process of adjusting the balance for the other portions. And then finally, let's go ahead and test our floating crystal loop. So continue working on this process until you get the mix to a point where you really feel that it's balanced together properly.